Donald Trump had more huge victories this week, winning Florida and knocking Marco Rubio out of the race. But during his victory speech at Mar-a-Lago, he challenged one of the cable pundits, and then he said this.
Lies, deceit, viciousness, disgusting reporters, horrible people. Sure. Some are nice. Some are nice. Some really disgusting people back there.
And during a round of morning show interviews, Trump used a word on CNN that sent the disgusting people of the press to their battle stations.
If we're, 100 short, and we're at 1,100 and somebody else is at 500 or 400 because we're way ahead of everybody, I don't think you can say that we don't get it automatically. I think you'd have riots. I think you'd have riots.
And that one word was all it took, riots.
It must feel really good knowing these people are there and willing to fight for you and stick by you even if you shoot someone on Fifth Avenue. Suggesting lawlessness, even offhand, in response to a lawful but unpopular event isn't very presidential.
You don't give me the nomination if I'm even the front runner. Forget the majority. If I'm the front runner, you give it to me or I'm going to, well, it sounds like he would encourage riots.
It's one thing for other people to predict violence or even riots in a politician's campaign. It's another thing for the candidate himself to promise/threaten that and then not condemn that as a possibility.
Joining us now to analyze the campaign coverage, Heidi Presbella, senior political correspondent for USA Today. Gail Trotter, a commentator who writes for the Daily Caller and The Hill. And Joe Trippi, Democratic strategist and Fox News contributor. Heidi, I was surprised that the media went to DEFCON 1 over Trump's riots comment. I mean, I've used that phrase, oh, there'll be riots if this happens, and I thought it was hyperbole, but now some commentators saying he was threatening violence.
Yeah, I had thought, wow, that's terrible, because I didn't see the actual comments myself until I went back and read them. And honestly, I had said something similar earlier in the week, that if the race, in this context, if the race were that close and Trump had just below the number needed to get the delegates, and, the Republicans came in and swooped in with some other candidate, there would be mutiny, there would be chaos. Ted Cruz used those words too. But when Donald Trump said it, because it came in the context of a week in which there was actual violence going on at his rallies, and he is in the spotlight for encouraging violence at his rallies, it took on a life of its own.
What do you think, Gail? And also, this comes against the backdrop of many in the conservative media just pushing these endless scenarios about what could, should, might happen in Cleveland because they're in the never Trump camp.
Yes, and this is nothing new in politics. You might remember that President Obama in 2009 sat down with American CEOs and told them that his administration was the only thing between him and the pitchforks. So this is nothing new in politics. And yes, the conservative media, the far left and the far right, are trying to keep anybody but Trump from getting the nomination. So I think they continue to push this narrative as well.
Joe, are the media underplaying the explosion of anger, not necessarily violence, but chaos is a good word, that would take place if deals are cut and Donald Trump is denied the nomination if he's close to the magic number?
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. Look, I've said it. I'll say it clearer. If they do this, it'll blow up the party. Now, I wasn't talking about violence.
You weren't talking about TNT and dynamite.
Yeah, it is a huge mistake to think. And look, regardless of the language he used, he spoke the truth. This is one of the things about Trump. He speaks something that his followers believe is true, and that most of us believe is true, which is if they did this, there's going to be chaos and disruption and a lot of anger out there. And then the media responds by saying, oh my gosh, how could he say that? Which just reinforces him with his supporters and actually encourage more his strength in oncoming primaries.
Seems to be a pretty deep split in the coverage, Heidi, between those who say Trump's got this thing wrapped up and those who say he could definitely be stopped at the convention.
I feel like, first and foremost, none of us have seen, a lot of us, not all of us, but not us, have seen a contested convention before, and so there's just not a lot of direction here. But more
the reporters are dying for this to be a knockdown, drag out, 4 days that really matter,
right,
and not some staged coronation.
But I think there's also some overcompensation going on here, because what you have is the columnists on the right and the left who've always been very harsh on Trump, but then you have the herd. And the herd was wrong in the beginning. Everybody wrote him off. And
Almost
said,
everybody.
Almost everybody.
Not everybody.
Most everybody, okay, wrote him off and was very skeptical about him. And then here we are today, flash forward, and I think there's a lot of overcompensation at this point now to say that you can't deny him what is rightfully his because he's done so well and exceeded our expectations.
Speaking of the, I just want to get the soundbite in, Joe, and you can respond on the other side. Speaking of the media coverage, here's Ted Cruz complaining about the extent to which day after day after day Donald Trump seems to soak up most of the media attention. Let's look.
Donald Trump practically goes to the bathroom and it gets carried live on network television. Every speech he gives, he does a press conference that's like watching the shopping channel. He's up there selling steaks and steak knives and wine. The media desperately wants him to be the nominee.
Media desperately wants Donald Trump to be the nominee?
No. I think, look, if Ted Cruz said things that were interesting that everybody wanted to see, he'd be on a lot more. And Trump does say, regardless of whether you agree with him or not, he says things that people find interesting. And I think that's part of the problem here. The other candidates haven't been able to do that.
It makes himself accessible, too.
Yeah.
Well, holy cow, this is a man bites dog story because you have Trump, who's not a conventional candidate. It's a game. He goes out there and says things that a conventional candidate would never say. The press goes completely wild. And then we have this ability of Donald Trump to use jujitsu to turn all this negative media to his advantage.
Well, Senator Cruz went on to say that the reason the media want, in his view, Donald Trump to be the nominee is so they can then turn on him and he'd be a weak nominee against Hillary Clinton. Senator Cruz, in a recent interview with me, said virtually all journalists are partisan Democrats, and I don't agree with that when it applies to a lot of reporters. But that's his argument now.
Oh, the media leans left, though. You would have to agree the media leans
I'm not arguing that
left.
for a minute, but the idea that we are orchestrating this in a way so that Trump would be the weakest nominee, but he would win, I mean, there's a lot more to why he gets all this coverage.
Such a proliferation in the media that I can't believe the American people are still that gullible to believe that somehow we are this monolith. We've gone from, you know, just a few major news organizations to news organizations like Drudge on the right and Huffington Post on the left. So how can the American people still continue to believe this?
Has there been a nominee, potential nominee, that's been as hammered and pushed off by the media as Donald Trump?
No, he's gotten an avalanche.
That's my point. I mean, if the media had the power to decide things, Donald Trump wouldn't be the front runner.
One of the bizarre things about this campaign is that the negative media attention, of which Trump's gotten plenty, along with some positive, actually helps him, in my view. All right. So we saw Donald Trump on Tuesday night talk about disgusting media people. That's sort of part of his shtick. But in recent days, he has renewed his war on Fox News anchor Megyn Kelly, tweeting, among other things, that she is crazy, Megyn Kelly, that she is sick, that her show is unfair, that nobody should watch the show, basically calling for a boycott. And this prompted a very strong statement from Fox News on Friday night. If we can put it up on the screen, part of it says, Donald Trump's vitriolic attacks against Megyn Kelly and his extreme, sick obsession with her is beneath the dignity of a presidential candidate who wants to occupy the highest office in the land. Megyn is an exemplary journalist and one of the leading anchors in America. It's especially deplorable for her to be repeatedly abused for just doing her job. Heidi, what do you make of this back and forth?
Let me just say that in my particular position, I'm a young woman in this industry who's watching Megyn Kelly and women like her and are inspired by her success. So to that extent, it's been upsetting, and that is why I was motivated to get to the bottom of this. What was it exactly that Megyn Kelly did to invite this latest storm of criticism? And I went back and looked, and what I found, check it out, people, go online. The tweeting started before Megyn Kelly even went on the air the election night. He said, oh, Megyn Kelly's on the air. Everybody change your channel. So this is, part of a pattern of Trump kind of going off the handle, because then he clearly continued to watch and sent out these tweets using loaded words like sick and crazy. And the fact of the matter is, Megyn Kelly was giving the same kind of coverage of those election results, mostly positive, that her male counterparts were on virtually every other network, and yet there was not that kind of response.
If Donald Trump wants to say a journalist biased, unfair, don't watch his or her show, that's fine. Politicians can do that. Journalists are not immune from criticism. But I do think words like sick and crazy are over the top. Gail.
That seems like it's an extreme form of language that he's using, but listening to the back and forth between Donald Trump and Megyn Kelly seems like a duet of Carly Simon's song, You're So Vain, because he tells Megyn Kelly, oh, you're average, your show can't rate, and she responds, I'm doing just fine without you. So I think that she's been good for the last 8 months to not respond very much to his attacks, and I think Fox News coming out and making this statement kind of feeds into his victimization complex. And Fox News, the top people would be better served not to get into it and let Megyn handle it by herself.
Fox has to defend her because she's pushing into new frontiers here, and this kind of vitriol is not acceptable, targeting her. I think they have to come out, and she remains her professionalism, maintains her professionalism by not directly responding and getting into the mud.
What surprised me, Joe, is there had been a brief truce. In fact, Donald Trump told reporters, and he told me after the debate in Detroit, that she had been fair to him. But this does seem to flare up. And I had asked him, are you obsessing too much about what cable pundits say? He didn't think so. He looks at it as setting the record straight. Does this sort of thing hurt Donald Trump potentially with women?
Absolutely. Look, he's got a huge gender gap. He's running very, very strong with white men, but he's got a problem with support among women, Republican women. And I think going after Megyn Kelly doesn't help him. And the only explanation I have is he views himself as a ratings bonanza for the networks. That's why the coverage of debates has been so high in his mind, and which I think is true. But so I think he wants to punish Megyn Kelly by trying to drive her ratings lower, turn the channel.
Right.
It's just it's not working, and it's doing him damage with women voters.
Whatever shows Donald Trump appears on does juice the ratings, but Megyn Kelly still has the second highest rated show in cable news, and so his lack of diplomatic relations with her has not hurt the Kelly file. All right, got to get a break. I know you have more to say.